Remember about a decade ago when the movement to basically turn the lights off for everybody, the environmentalist movement, hailed their new leader, this 14-year-old girl who went on strike. Yeah, the economy, really suffers when the 14-year-olds go on strike. But she stopped going to school because of climate change. Um, she had some great moments that put her in the headlines, like the moment where she angrily said, "You have stolen my childhood. How dare you?" And that moment where she's all smiling in some sort of UN event, and Trump walks by and she's still smiling, and then she realizes that her camera's around, so she turns her face really angry and looks at him angrily. Well, the use of children as as poster children for movements is not a new thing. Greta wasn't the first. She's obviously not the last. The people on the other side of the same movement also, or of the same topic, also tried the use of children a little bit less successfully, mostly teenagers, not children. Um, and yeah, now this Guy Christensen. Yes, I have to look it up. Sorry, TikTokers. I'm not as familiar as I should be with what's going on in the younger generation's culture. But yeah, Guy Christensen. His name on TikTok is Your Favorite Guy. Um, has been producing pro-Hamas content, anti-Israel content for the past year. He is, I was told in the production meeting by, was it Marco or Richard? Sorry, I can tell you apart, unlike some people in our audience, but I just don't remember who said it. That he just celebrated his 19th birthday. So he's legally an adult, and his ideas are, similar to unfortunately some adults, and but it's interesting when he says how he Daniel, some of these jokes need to be said on air. Like it's too good to be written on Zoom. But anyway, yeah, maybe we'll have that as a like a membership benefit of the very high levels. What Daniel says on Zoom, on the Zoom chat, that you don't get to see on shows, and people hear me, blabbering on about with no context. Um, but yeah, who this person is, how he talks, the way he talks about how he came to his conclusions, I thought was fascinating. He also recently was in kind of social media uh, virality by talking about the FBI coming after him. Kind of like the guy we talked about on yesterday's episode of the reality show. Although this guy at 19 has a bit more excuses. Um, Look, we have a video to go through rather than be just continuing this endlessly, but I want to quickly go to you guys, especially Richard and Marco. You both have watched more of this guy than I have. Any general impressions, any impressions of something he said in one of the videos we're not going to watch today? What should we know about your favorite guy?
Well, I need to correct your misleading impression for a start because I'd never heard of the dude before a few hours ago. So, yes, we've watched a few of his videos, but only in the last few hours in preparation for this. But yeah, anyway, that's my caveat out of the way. Yeah, oh God, he's the state of the culture in a person again. Is another example of a litany of people who just see a little bit on social media and then claim they've spent loads of research time on it and claim they're an expert on it when clearly they've only seen one side of it, and they've been carefully funneled down one particular side of it by the social media that they've looked at. And this is part of the problem. This is part of what led them to the ludicrous impression that drops so much context, never refers to half the stuff that we're going to refer to when we correct him in the course of this today.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier on Greta going on strike at 14. Well, this kind of shows what happens if you don't go to school. You grew up and you are pig ignorant. And then you spew out stuff that, is literally just words kind of attached with some grammatical form, but actually in the end, you don't say anything. And this is exactly a guy who only repeats certain phrases and he only uses certain words and really doesn't say anything. He never justifies his claims. He never tells you why he thinks certain things. It's effectively, I don't know. It's like a parrot who's been trained to say certain phrases, and in the end, yes, it comes across as evil because, as we mentioned, he's 19 now, so he would have the chance to verify what he's spewing. He would have the chance to speak to somebody else, especially having a big following. Surely he could leverage that and get to talk to somebody who knows a bit more than he does. But no, he chooses to stick to what he thinks he believes, and chooses to spew it out quite liberally, and always comes from a lefty perspective again. The biggest interview I found online was done with a socialist paper. I tried to find out a bit of his background because you don't want to criticize somebody just for the sake of it. You want to find out who you're talking about. But I couldn't find anything in terms of who his parents are. Has he got parents? Has he been educated formally? As somebody in his life that tells him, well, perhaps you're wrong. It doesn't seem to happen. Or if it does happen, his parents must be, people from Hamas or something, because the kind of stuff he says is pretty unforgivable, really.
I thought we would have to wait until we play his video for me to be triggered. But first of all, no, his parents could be middle class, upper middle class, and what really triggered me there, Marco, was you said, this is what happens when you don't go to school. No, where do you think these people got these ideas? They got them in schools. So yeah, this is what happens when you do go to school, even if you take Friday off. And yeah, so I blame the schools. Primarily, I blame, education ultimately is the job of two people. Their names are mommy and daddy, and yeah, those are the people responsible for this kid being who he is. At 19, he is also personally responsible, but I still put a lot of the blame on the parents. Just a second, Daniel, before I go to you, there's a couple of things I wanted to read in the chat, but I can't find them, except Jonathan's comment. Jonathan says, should I thank or curse ARCUK for bringing all these shitheads to my attention? Well, I think everybody should both thank and curse us, as long as it's done in super chats and, of course, separate ones. So, yeah. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is like a typical example of similar to Greta, this sort of almost like young idealism, sort of like a consciousness or of the society today. Because again, what he says is not something unique. It's not different even from the sort of the underlying philosophical ideas that are the result of the current state of society. Basically, yeah, if you talk about if you take altruism seriously, if you take the oppressor versus oppressed seriously, then the Palestinians are the oppressed ones, and he is rightly to be outraged, basically saying, well, similar to what Greta has been saying, how dare you? I mean, how dare you not care about the Palestinians? How can you support Israelis? It's what you get. It's it's the result of basically the West giving up on actually recognizing civilization versus barbarism, of recognizing what it takes to actually have a civil society, what ideas it takes to support this civil society. And as a result, the youngest people, the ones who are the most idealistic, the ones who are trying to be most consistent with the ideas they have, this is what you get. People like him. I mean, I was similar, like 2 years ago.
Deborah says, my kids are in their 30s now, but I remember being incredibly unimpressed by their teachers' intellect. Today's teachers are the kids who got D's in high school. It's a bit homophobic. But anyway, should we play the clip before I, keep getting ourselves canceled?
So today I want to share my story and discuss Gen Z activism and the power of social media. Did you know that 1/3 of Gen Zers say they regularly engage in activism for the issues they care about? That rate is almost 50% higher than the engagement of millennials. No offense, guys. That also means that there are nearly 500 million young activists running around in the world. I myself, and I'm sure others here in the crowd, are some of these people. Not only are there more activists in Gen Z than any other generation, but Gen Z and the next generation is shaping up to be the most influential cohort in history. We care deeply about social justice and human rights, and we are acting on our beliefs. Actually, a larger proportion of Gen Z cares about every issue across the board than any other age group in the United States. 66% of our activism is carried out online, meaning that our social spaces online need to be recognized as the future of organizing and activism. Despite that fact, and despite the trend of Americans shifting to consuming news and politics online more than ever, and despite the fact that most people in this day and age are now forming their political opinions online, 76% of people believe that all social media does is make people think they're making a difference when they actually aren't.
All right. Well, I want to pause there. I don't know if there's much to talk about yet, but I had a conversation a few days ago and somebody was saying, well, there was Gen X and now there's Gen Z. What's next? And I said, well, you know, it's the end of the world. Like, where do you go from Gen Z? And I think this guy pretty much makes me feel that way as well when I listen to him talk. Richard.
Yeah. I mean, he talks about his generation, however many he said they were running around in their billions or whatever, and they're not running around in their billions, are they? They're hiding in their mum's basement. They're literally tapping out on social media and thinking that makes a difference. Now, spoiler alert for what he says later in this clip, or for what he says in other clips. I can't remember now. They all merge into one because they're all much of the same thing. He voted for Jill Stein in the election, and he encouraged his generation to vote for Jill Stein. And Jill Stein got about 750,000 votes last time I saw, which is about more or less the same as RFK Jr. got, despite not actually being on the ballot, but technically. So that's how influential the generation is at the moment. But of course, it is influential in other ways, and it will be influential in the future. It's just that they also will grow up in the future as well. And that's a relevant factor that people often overlook when they're analyzing a younger generation, because we've all been there, and we're all at that idealistic stage at one time or another. And we all learned over time, more context and facts about the world. So I think, yeah, well, this is just the start, isn't it? So I'll leave it at that.
I mean, how can you judge this guy? Just listen to what he says, or actually what he's not saying. He's been talking for how long? A couple of minutes. And what did he say? Absolutely nothing. Numbers, percentage, statistics, hearsay. And the great phrase, Gen Z care about more issue than everyone else. It's like, yeah, right, come on. Because you don't have to worry about where your meal comes from at the end of the day. So that's an issue he doesn't worry about, that's for sure. Anyway, yeah, throughout this thing, first of all, we heard the same thing he says in this video in a couple of videos, nearly verbatim. He keeps repeating and says stuff. The guy, as I said, is a parrot. He's an evil parrot, because if somebody repeats something, it doesn't have any will behind it, but he chooses to use those words. He chooses to make those arguments. So it's not just parroting, he's choosing to say the things he said. But ultimately, he never makes a single decent argument about anything. He doesn't make a single decent argument why is Gen Z better positioned to be activist. He doesn't make an argument why other generation care less than Gen Z. What are you saying about? And let alone when you start talking about the issue at play here, it's just noise.
Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the funniest thing about the support for Jill Stein and generally, this election we had now, for most people, or for most Americans, Israel or Ukraine, for that matter, foreign policy in general, just wasn't that big of an issue. But for people like him, for the Arab population in America, for those it was much more important. And it's almost funny, the fact that they've basically said that Kamala Harris is a genocide supporter, so we cannot vote for her. So instead, they got Marco Rubio as a Secretary of State, and that's just funny to me that they would have so much opposition to basically the sort of like the mainstream Democrat like politician, that they would rather have like an opposition. And that's something we've seen, especially with young people, basically being I don't like to call them radical, because that's in my vocabulary that's a good word, but so disjointed or sort of disconnected from actually looking at what are the important issues, and what are the better outcomes, at least like from their perspective. And yeah, supporting a candidate like Jill Stein, who again would have been like would have like actually destroyed America. I remember when someone when a few months ago someone on the show said like they hope none of the main candidates would win, and I was like, Jesus, I hope at least Donald Trump or Kamala Harris would win, because like Jill Stein was like an actual destruction of America if you look at like her policies.
Yeah. Thank you, John, for the super chat. John says, oddly, 46% of Gen Zers voted for Trump. Sauce for the gander, I guess. So their activism cuts both ways. Yeah, I think, they tend to be, the louder ones tend to be on the side of this kid. Best Monster says, Jill Stein is probably one of the most evil U.S. presidential candidates ever. Yeah, I completely agree. As I've said on this show, if it was down to Jill Stein versus either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, I would, campaign for whoever it is that's running against her. Deborah says he spouted numbers, but did not cite his sources. Does anybody know how to properly debate today? Wait till you get to what's coming, which we're coming to in a second. And Zara says, wait until they've got jobs, mortgages, and children. Yes, in some cases, no doubt, like once they start, living life as adults, like their entire life up until now, when you're 18 or 19, you've been a full-time parasite. Sorry to put it that way, but that's what they are. Like, it's good, to have parents take care of their children, but they haven't actually had to take care of themselves at any point in their life before the age of 18, 19. Then again, he is on a panel with 3 other people, as we'll see, and he says that they're Gen X. So yeah, there are people who, yeah, it's an active process, thinking and challenging yourself, and there's, people can compartmentalize and say, okay, well, yeah, I have a job and I have a mortgage and whatever, but it's all the Jews' fault or something to that effect. Let's listen to some more of this kid.
As living proof of the real power of digital activism, I am here trying to be a symbol of hope for young people and human beings. I am here to show you that anyone's voice can change minds, lives, and even the world. Let's rewind to October 7th. I have to admit, like Latiria here said earlier, before October 7th, I knew nothing about Israel or Palestine. Zero. Nilch. I had an established platform, though, where I'd been speaking a bit about American politics over the course of 3 or 4 years. And when I saw my feed flooded with countless pro-Israel posts attacking the Palestinian people, I was caught off guard. I saw a pair of comments on my TikTok. Someone had said, it was this very simple comment, it said Google Nakba. It said Google open air prison. And so that's what I did. What I found changed the course of my life. What I found ignited a fire in my soul. I was shocked to learn of Israel's illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank, their violence against Palestinians, the displaced families and bulldozed homes. To me, it was reminiscent of the colonization of Native Americans by English settlers. The parallels were haunting, and it begged the question, why was this not being talked about in the context of October 7th? Why was nobody mentioning these facts? Nobody in the media, nobody online.
All right,
I learned the
all
true
right. This is a good
nature
place
of
to
the
stop.
Gaza
You
Strip.
know, what really annoys me about what you said, Marco, is that you listen to that and you think, okay, the thing about a great education is not that it's going to tell you, you know, yeah, you should support Israel and you know, be in favor of capitalism and everything. It's going to teach you how to think. And this guy, now he tells us his sources. People said Google knock. First of all, he tells us that he has, you know, this platform for had it for 3 or 4 years back at October 7th. So he's been around since what, the age of 14 as a political commentator. But you know, people said Google Nakba, Google open air prison. What are you going to get when you Google that? You're going to get the propaganda of the people who want to tell you why, you know, raping and torturing and burning people alive was actually a good thing because of the Nakba, the fact that a Jewish state exists where, you know, only 22 Arab countries exist, and open air prison, which is the fact that when Israel left the Gaza Strip, it didn't let weapons basically into Gaza. Richard.
Yeah, Google the Hamas propaganda terms and you will find Hamas propaganda. And if that's where you stop your Googling, that's all you'll finish with. And then you'll parrot it out, as Marco said. I think here in the UK, we've already had so much talk about education, and recently, in the past couple of days, the Oxford and Cambridge Education Board were talking about wanting to make certain things front and centre in the curriculum, including climate change and diversity and all the other standard things like colonisation and all those kind of stuff. And of course, this is what the impact of that is. Not that they need to announce that they're going to do that, because as far as I can see, that's already been brought in and laid over just about every subject in every way possible. I think he refers to October the 7th as if that's the point when he opened his eyes to how evil Israel was and how terrible Israel was. But he never actually talks about October the 7th, what actually happened on October the 7th, and what the Hamas and the Palestinians did on October the 7th. And of course, in all of the videos that I've seen across the course of the last few hours, all of those talking on this subject, he does it as usual. There are words that are completely absent from it. There are words that are repeated ad nauseum, like Nakba, etc. But there are words that are completely absent from it. Hostages, for example. Hostages is always absent. Hostages is never in any of these people's arguments for why Israel is evil, because that's indefensible. And of course, at no point do they mention that it's ordinary Palestinians who also partook in October the 7th, even if you want to make some kind of phony distinction between Hamas and ordinary Palestinians. There were many that simply followed Hamas across the border and committed atrocities themselves and cheered it and celebrated it and kept those hostages in their own homes. And some of them were journalists and some of them were medical people. And, you know, that doesn't make, again, of course, he's going to refer to the hospitals and all of that kind of stuff, but without ever referring to these key facts, which we are bored with having to repeat to these brain dead morons.
Yeah, brain dead morons. Digital activism. Can you believe it? I mean, these people rot in bed all day. All they do is switch on their phone, and they call themselves activists just because they Google a word. And you know, earlier on I Google particle physics, and tomorrow I'm going to apply for CERN. You know, I've Googled it. I know enough to do it. Surely I can. I'm a you know, physicist activist, aren't I? I mean, this kind of stuff is just hard to believe that a kid like that manages to convince himself that he can actually make an argument which is supposed to convince somebody without making the argument, without having any background. As Richard pointed out, he mentions October the 7th, but he also doesn't seem to understand what actually happened on October 7th. He seems to understand that after October 7th, Israel bombed Gaza, and that's it. That's the extent of the stuff he knows. And you're right. Partly comes from the fact that every medium in the land. Every website, every chat, every activist, other digital activist on any other platform spews out the same stuff, i.e., that Israel attacked Gaza, totally out of context. But this kid takes it to the next level, really. The fact that he also talks about how he was the word he uses, his account was flooded by images of atrocity on Gazans. Really? Because did he miss the first few hours when it was actually the Gazans who were attacking Israel and slaughtering over 1,000 Israeli at one of the events where he probably likes to go, like parties and the Nova Festival. People were
Well,
actually
he didn't know about Israel and Palestine on October 7, only after.
Yeah, and there's another whopper coming up. I don't want to spunk it now, but there's a massive whopper he says about his level of knowledge that it's kind of, I mean, it disqualifies him from even making an argument to anyone. But of course, he finds himself in front of people like him, who just care about the emotionalism, the words, and the big words that don't even understand the meaning of it. And they make themselves like leaders of the pack, trying to being on the right side, on the good side of the people who they see as their leaders, in order to probably carve a space for themselves. Because again, they don't want to be the foot soldiers. They want to be with the elites that will eventually tell everybody else how to live.
Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, well, first his point about like no one talks about it, and whenever I hear it, I'm like, it's the only thing almost that people talk about, and it's always the people who have the biggest platforms, the people who have like the biggest voices, who say, "Oh, thank you for allowing me to speak, because the mainstream media wouldn't even let me on." And he says that on like a mainstream media or something. People who cannot talk about something, we don't hear from them because they cannot talk about it. You don't have like a North Korean radio show talking about, hey, this Kim Jong-un guy. I know we're not supposed to talk bad about them, but I'm gonna talk bad about them. No, those people are killed. This like trying to make comparisons between those things is like crazy. And then, Chandler in the chat said something like, "Oh, Google under 6 million, you'll also be surprised what you'll find." Yeah, if you go looking for specific information like open air prison, what are the Nakba, what are the other, the apartheid state, Israel also, then yeah, you'll find specific
Kennedy
viewpoints.
assassination.
Yeah. You'll find like those specific things you're looking for, and it's important to remember, if you watch like one video, if you read like one article, it's gonna be internally consistent. Like you won't find like problems in like one article itself. You actually need to know like the full context. You need to know what specific things are referring to actually grasp it as knowledge. You cannot just look at one article or look at just a bunch of articles and, oh, well, that's the reality now. And then, of course, just because you have information, it doesn't provide you with philosophy and with how to interpret those facts and what what needs to actually happen. You can know the whole history of Israel, of the Arab people, of the whole Middle East, and you won't have knowledge about what is the right thing to do, what is the right thing to do after October 7th, what was the right thing to do before October 7th. You need actual philosophy for that. And what philosophy does he have? Probably some mongrel philosophy of whatever is in the society right now, which is like some mix of altruism with whatever is popular right now. And yeah, of course, the only you don't even need the facts. I mean, you can just read a bunch of things and you won't change your opinion because you already have like the philosophy. Like Israel can never be right in this context if Israel is the stronger nation and it's winning. No amount of information, no amount of background can convince you otherwise because of your philosophy.
Thank you, Yotam, for the super chat. Yotam says, let's fund a trip to Gaza for him. They'd love him. Yeah, I'm all for that. There were a few others. Somebody says this dude found an opening to get laid with his cause. Yeah, I'm sure that's something. I know it's part of it to some extent, but I also completely assume that he believes the bullshit that he is spewing. Uh, Zara says I was a parasite once. Yeah, so was I. I didn't mean to morally condemn all children. I use parasite as a term of endearment.
Just quickly, someone says, haha, mongrel philosophy, good one. I believe that's a term I heard from Ayn Rand, just
Yeah.
to give credit.
Philosophy,
What?
philosophy who needs it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan, for a super chat. Jonathan says 3 weeks ago I knew nothing. Now I'm obviously an expert, in quotation marks, as in this is what this guy is saying. And there is another one. Thank you, Jonathan, for another super chat. Jonathan says, folks, show your support, even $2 or $5 for the largest program inspired by Ayn Rand's objectivism in history, ARCUK, 7 days a week. Show them you value what they do. I completely support and agree with that. Roland, thank you for the super chat. Roland says, Google Roland is awesome and learn all about my greatness. We will do that right after, not right after the show because we have a briefly objective, but right after that. And yeah, I think I forgot to say at the start, so I will say now that if you are watching this recorded and you don't see videos, clips when we say here's a clip of him, that's because, you know, if they may ask for it to be removed, which is of course something you can do according to the YouTube terms. But we will have a link to the full video, and we should have it with those clips when we post it later on X, which we do with every episode of the reality show. So you can watch it there. You should follow us on X anyway, in case someday this platform is less happy to host us. Yeah, let's play some more of the clip.
2 million people locked behind a prison wall on a parcel of land. Half of them are children. Israel has 2 decades history of restricting their access to things like water and calories even. They aren't free. Israel even has a term for this, hafrada, meaning separation. The Jewish state bill allows the replacement of Palestinian households with Zionist ones. And it offered another layer to me as I'm learning about Zionism and the true nature of the state of Israel at this point in my life. And it was a turning point that made me question the morality of Israel's actions. Everything I was being fed by the Western media, by my content feed, was the total opposite of what I was learning about. It seemed like, and we know this, that the Western media is unanimous in trying to paint Israel as 100% in the right. I mean, you've seen the biased headlines over the past year. So, as I was discovering the truth, I was wondering, why was there a resounding silence about the struggle of the Palestinians? Nobody wanted to talk about it. So, a turning point in this personal journey of mine occurred when I received an email from a Zionist organization offering me $5,000 to pledge my support for Israel on live stream. This came a few days after October 7th. And also after I had posted a single video, I think this was one of my first videos about Palestine, comparing the parallels between American colonization and that of historic Palestine on my account. This was my first direct encounter with the Israeli propaganda machine, and it was an offer to trade truth for money. I was disgusted. My morals are not for sale.
All right, this is a good point to. Oh, actually, do you want to just play those few seconds? Yeah, let's see that again.
With the fear of speaking out, the headlines.
All right, yeah, yeah. I mean, look. I don't know. Maybe again, you know, some people are triggered by certain things, but yeah, anybody who does this because clapping is white supremacist or something has lost me. By the way, yeah, speaking of sending people to Gaza, the 2 women on the panel, you know, if they do go to Gaza, should probably reconsider the way they dress. And anybody who thinks that makes me sexist, I'm all for, women showing their hair and anything else they want to show. But in Gaza, you would get killed for that. So yeah, keep that in mind when you support a certain side. Yeah, that $5,000 thing. Let's assume for a
Jews wanted
second.
to pay him off.
Let's assume for a second it's true, even though it is absolutely, I can say with near certainty, made up bullshit. So somebody who is pro-Israel said, okay, let's use an influencer who talks about politics and offer him money. And this is the Zionist propaganda machine. And look, I think at this point, after a year of research into the topic, he probably knows that when he uses Zionist, what it is meant by, at least by most of his comrades, is Jews. It's a way of saying Jews. So yeah, this is Jewish. This is what the Jews do. They give innocent people like me money to say things I disagree with, but my morals are not for sale. Yeah. Richard.
And in another clip, can't remember which one, he talks about, or possibly it's later in this one, he talks about raising £16,000 for a particular guy in Gaza. Now, I don't know whether that particular guy in Gaza has an UNRWA card, and on the back it says Islamic Jihad or whatever. But either way, he could well be funding terrorism himself. And that is what we ought to be pointing out, to be honest. And the propaganda machine, if you want to call it that, is what is generating all of this money for that goes to Gaza, but actually goes to terrorism or goes to the billionaires in Qatar who run Hamas, and all of that is never covered. There are never billionaires mentioned when it comes to Hamas, and there are never all of the terrorism that is the subject of the humanitarian aid. I think one of the things that Ayn Rand wrote about the new left, and this was ages ago, so it's now be the old left, or you could call it the Gen Z left because it's the same kind of left, is that they're docile conformists. She said that they've accepted the dogma of all the philosophical beliefs of their elders for the last 200 years. And of course, the main philosophical belief, she points out, is that faith and feeling are superior to reason. And that is what we're seeing when you look at this guy or any of the similar creatures like him. There's no reason in there at all. It's all taking stuff on faith that these people are oppressed, and working on the feelings of being shown some out of context video clips that negate the fact that Hamas and the Palestinians caused the suffering which they're experiencing. And therefore, the reason is entirely missing from the argument, and therefore the right answer is entirely missing from his argument.
Again, I mean, how can you argue with this guy? It makes statement like, occupation of Palestine is the same as the occupation of the Indian lands in North America. It's like, really, why, how, on what context, who, when? No, he just makes a statement to be taken as gold, not to be questioned, because he never questions things clearly. And you mentioned the thing about school. Well, he admits at school he was taught the opposite, that the Palestinians clearly weren't the victims. So there is still some good. He still does some good going to school. It's just that when you start accepting the narrative of the other side without questioning it, okay, he hasn't accepted this money from the Zionists, but has he accepted money from anyone else? Because sounds to me like he's peddling somebody else's line here with a fervor that comes beyond conviction, because it doesn't seem to have any conviction at all, apart from, as I said earlier on, a couple of taglines using words like genocide, occupation, and Zionism. Without really knowing what it means, and clearly doesn't know the facts. He doesn't know why from 2005 Israel was providing electricity and stuff to Gaza, because they decided to go solo. They decided to vote themselves into the fascist state of Hamas, and they decided to run themselves. And what did they do? They just created a war machine designed to destroy Israel. But he doesn't know this. It probably doesn't even think about this kind of stuff he's talking about. But, you know, he talks anyway. He's got a mouth, so he might well talk.
Yeah, it is interesting that he talks specifically about the last 2 decades, as in the period when Israel has no presence and the Palestinians can build a great, you know, country-ish for themselves in Gaza if they want, but instead build whatever can be built to further their actual cause, which is exterminating the Jews. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, he should also Google the protocols of the Elders of Zion. He'll also be surprised what he'll find. You know, about his other stuff, like, so he brought up the point of like restricting access to calories and water. And I think I saw Matthew bring that up on X. If during the disengagement, if they got up and basically said, we will not provide you with anything, you can try building it yourself, then he would make that point. You know, they just left and they didn't leave them with anything. So it's like, again, the facts don't matter. You know, the facts are just so we can say something, use the number, how many people died, or the fact that they are controlling some of it, meaning they are actually providing it. And use that against them. There's no, you know, again, there's the philosophy doesn't allow him to ever be like pro-Israel or ever be pro-Western civilization. He'll always be against that. And you know, the use of Zionism. I think just do I even want to make this point? I think Adolf Hitler like really he screwed up when he didn't call them Zionists, because he would be able to get away with everything if he just did that.
Yeah, and the Zionist movement, you know, was already existed and had already, been active. But few comments in the chat. Stedman says, Tarazi, I did not get my 5K check. Well, I don't want to assume your age, but from the picture, I think you might be legal. So, yeah, you know, that's why. But Jonathan Honig, thank you for another super chat. This is $5, so 1,000th of what we would get if we were underage TikTokers, you know, with a massive audience. Jonathan says he somehow makes a kafia look even more idiotic. Yeah, there's a bunch of kafias there. It's interesting, you know, they're on the table. I don't know if. By the way, how are kafias not cultural appropriation? But anyway, well, that's a story for another day.
I mean, again, it's the same thing. They are, but it's not a problem because again, the facts don't matter. Like you just have some underlying philosophy and you just use it to get out of the realm of, you know, facts.
Yeah, and Alex points out in the chat something that I immediately thought when he talked about calorie restriction. I thought about the video we did a couple days ago of Gazans being moved from one place to another, and yeah, I don't know. They have enough calories. Let's put it that way. There's no shortage of it in Gaza. Okay, let's play some more.
That day were filled with stories of the Harvard students getting blacklisted, doxxed. They had, I believe, a truck with the students' faces and names and I believe addresses going around campus, and Wall Street execs were going on to the media in the United States saying these kids are never being hired. And all because they signed a letter in support of Palestine. And this is what I was seeing. And I was asking myself, what if the same were to happen to me if I spoke out? And then I thought, why do I have this platform? Why have I been gifted with these skills if I do not use it to stand up for what is right? Especially when it feels like the hardest choice to make in the entire world. I knew I had to step up. Since that day, I've probably spent upwards of 10,000 hours in research, speaking, thinking about, crying for, and advocating for Palestine. There is not a single thing in the world I'm more passionate about. There is not a single topic I've studied more in my 18 years of living. The more videos I've made, the more I've learned of the extent of the oppression and subjugation of the Palestinian
Okay,
people.
all right. You know what? Let's pause. I don't know if we'll get to another clip, but it's interesting how, people people on the pro-Palestinian side who, think Nasrallah or Sinwar or any of those are the heroes of their cause, clearly don't understand what this kid has gone through. And he all he did was express his support for the movement that is saying very clearly in no uncertain terms that their only goal is the extermination of the Jews, and some evil Jews, I mean Zionists in Wall Street, don't want to hire him and his friends from Harvard. Yeah, poor kid. I mean, he really is, making the tough choices in life, but it has to be done.
Yeah, just a quick fact check. There hasn't even been 10,000 hours since October 7th last year. I have no idea how did he manage that?
When I heard that, I thought, let me try to calculate, and then I thought this is a waste of. Why am I even doing
It's actually 1 year and 51 days continuously talking, thinking, and informing himself about Palestinian issue. I mean, a year. I mean,
No sleep.
a year and 51 days continuous.
Okay, and it hasn't been a year and 51 days yet. It's been a year and 9 days?
Yeah.
About.
Perhaps
Yeah.
he found out in advance what Hamas were planning.
Well, no, because he didn't know about Israel-Palestine before October
Of
7th.
course, yeah.
Must have found out from the Zionists.
Yeah, and he's been studying it for his 18 years, or really just the year and 38 days.
But this shows what you guys really think, because math is well known to be a white supremacist concept, and so yeah, what he means by 10,000 hours is don't assume his
Oppression.
Yeah.
time.
I did see another clip where he talked about 1,000 hours. So this is just, it's like grade inflation, isn't it? It's like Hamas death numbers. They just, it's not enough. It's not getting a bigger reaction. Multiply by 10. That seems to be the MO. But yeah, I mean, you look at him, he's endlessly switching between, he's endlessly the endless victim as well. That's why he's siding with the Palestinians, because he's a victim of Zionist oppression himself and not being hired by the Wall Street people that he'd like to be hired by, or being on a list for signing whatever this letter is, which, as you say, is in support of annihilating Israel. In essence, it can't be for anything else. And of course, why would you want to hire someone like this, who, quite frankly, is just proving that they can't think? I don't want to hire people who can't think.
Especially when to him, a skill is being able to do monkey voices on TikTok, doing stupid little dances to stupid little song by stupid little people. And that's not the kind of skill that's really marketable, is it? I mean, who's going to give you a job on that basis? And you sign up to a letter or something that shows you're actually a hater, a person full of hate. So, well, perhaps you're not the person I want in my enterprise. And not only that, but later on in a different video, I think it is, he says he effectively admits that Gen Z agree on the fact that there is a genocide in Gaza. Well, actually, not an actual genocide. So he even knows that it's not a genocide. But nonetheless, he keeps using the word genocide because, like, the 10,000 number is much more impressive. If you start saying Israel is just defending itself, what kind of kudos does it give you? You're not going to look like a victim anymore, are you? So they clearly use these kind of words which don't have any basis in fact, just to spew the hateful propaganda. They even admit it openly.
Let me just quickly say, for people who don't usually read the live chat, there's some interesting comments about the 10,000 hours thing. I'm not going to read some of them because they're not necessarily all family friendly, but they are entertaining. I recommend looking at that. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, well, just quickly, my generation was like boycotting Wall Street executives. What is this? Oh, they don't want to hire us. You want to participate in a capitalist society? Well, Jesus, apparently the standards are much more down than in my days. And
You are the same generation, Daniel. What do you mean your days?
And also, he made the points about the Harvard students. Again, those students were like that's an actual occupation. They were occupying building grounds. They were breaking they were breaking the rules, and after that, no one was punished. No one was. There was some talk about maybe they won't be allowed to graduate, but even that didn't go through. Again, sort of like playing this victim mentality when you don't even have any credibility for it. There is literally nothing. And again, if he was, if he will be denied some work in the future or something like that, good. When Kanye talked about the Jews and how his problem with this, he lost some deals. That's a good thing. Cancel culture in some ways, well, not the cancel culture, but sort of like people not wanting to deal with you because of your ideas, it is like a good thing. This sort of basically you can say whatever you want, and people should give you a platform and people should hire you in spite of it, is it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in a sense, the cancel culture as a term is problematic, but we were talking yesterday about Pierce Morgan having on somebody who clearly what his mind is full of, and the ideas that he then expresses are just stuff he got on Nazi forums. And yeah, if somebody says no platform for somebody like that, that is absolutely a positive. I think we'll have time for one more clip, so let me quickly go to the super chats. Thank you, Alex, for the super chat. Alex says, take my Zionist funding. Yes, we accept Zionist funding. We'll accept Palestinian funding as well. We're not going to say what the Palestinians would like us to say, but if they want to send us money, we will use it better than they will. And they can do it in a super chat and then say what they have to say, which of course we won't read.
I don't know, Razif, from the Channel 12 interviews, it looks like the Palestinians are pretty much on board with Jews, taking over and actually being the governing authority in Gaza.
Yes, I doubt that, but I would love to be proven wrong, and there's no better way to prove me wrong than to send us some money. Thank you, Laura Seto, for the super chat. Laura Seto says 10,000 hours is 1.1415 years. Not impressed. Yes. Yeah, and again, there are a lot of interesting comments. I didn't read all of them, but about the 10,000 hours point, I watched the whole video. We're not going to get through all of it, but nobody calls him out on that. But let's see what more he has to say.
My content has reached over 500 million people in the last year. Imagine that. Me, at the time I was a senior in high school who knew nothing about Israel and Palestine. And I was able to accomplish so much. I was able to change so many minds. I was able to educate and enlighten so many millions of people, all with just my voice. And just to further debunk the thought that digital activism is not effective in real life, in the last 48 hours, myself and Rathbone here were able to raise a little over $16,000 for a man and his family in northern Gaza just through social media posts. And this is not a brag. I'm trying to prove a point here. And another example of real action in the world is that over the summer I made, I think, just 2 short videos about a boycott app called No Thanks. If you don't have it, please download it. It's on iOS and Android. And it allows people to scan any product anywhere and know whether or not it's on the boycott for Israel list. And those 2 videos encouraged 500,000 people to download that app. Think about the long-term effect down the line of all those people who joined in boycotting, who were able to start boycotting because of technology, because of my videos. That is likely tens of millions of dollars that were stopped from supporting a genocide. We are in an age of digital activism, and we exist under the shadow of algorithms. They do act to suppress us, But I will say, in the end of the day, they serve capitalism over Zionism, and we can take advantage of that.
All right, that's a
Any
good place to stop because it's
Why was she
interesting.
clapping?
Yeah, I was gonna get to that. Yeah, you know, she has internalized white supremacy in some ways, and sometimes stuff like that comes out, as does math. Alex said here that what was it? By 16K he means $75. Yeah, that could be the case. But it could also be that, you know, these people are guilted into giving money. Yeah, it's very interesting that he says, you know, iOS and Google, Android, all that stuff, all of it has, you know, if you're using it, you know, you are funding Zionists in some way or another. By the way, you know, a lot of the stuff from Israel is how Palestinians unfortunately are fed, and yeah, when you boycott Israel, that is probably the first thing that's gonna go away. But that's neither here nor there, and that kind of assumes that they actually care about Palestinians, which of course they don't. Daniel, you said you can't postpone the briefly objective. Okay, all right, then let's do this quickly. Richard, Marco.
Oh, okay. What final comment? I mean, he ends every video that he does these days with "Hello, have a great day," and "Bar like a sheep, free Palestine." That's verbatim, except for my commentary. But that's how he ends every video, and that's what he's doing. It's teaching people by rote, educating by parrot away, and hope people parrot back.
Yeah, fun fact, TikTok tends to have more creators with more than 1 million followers than other platform, perhaps because the Chinese like to go viral. But the fact that this guy is popular, it doesn't mean he's actually making a point on anything. It doesn't mean that what he says is valid. In fact, as I mentioned earlier on, it doesn't say anything at all. It never makes an argument. So all he does is effectively spewing out propaganda he gets from somewhere else. So, you know, when you listen to people like that, be careful. People can believe and be as irrational as they like, but it doesn't mean that they are correct.
Daniel?
I mean, I'll follow his example. Gaza delenda est.
Okay, you can find where to find us in the description. New video on the Briefly Objective. Ben Bayer, what's the title?
Altruism, why the government only grows.
That's premiering right now if you're watching live, and there's a link in the description if you're watching later. Thanks, guys, for joining me. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective.
Bye.